I am your gracious host, the masked investor. With me, we have the infamous Wealth Fair. Wealth Fair, talk to us. What is new for this year for you?
Hey, what's up, man? Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in and listening to us. Um, Everything of what we're doing last year is just a continuation, man. Trying to work on deals, trying to find properties and meet new people and meet new lenders, meet new agents, meet new property managers, contractors, all that stuff. So, um, working on a couple of deals, just see what happens for the new year, man. How are things your way?
Yeah, things are good. Starting off the new year, just making activity, right? And trying to push the ball down the field on things that need to be completed that hung over from last year and got some new things on the docket. And speaking of new things on the docket, I just wanted to guess that brings us to the topic of today's show. Over the past kind of year and accelerated in the past couple of months, we've just been paying attention to trends that have been happening macroeconomically, microeconomically, and just feel that we're at a period of transition. And so today's show, just wanted to have a conversation because as we've seen, they tell you the economy is strong and because the stock market is up and unemployment is low, just upskill and everything will be fine. But we don't just pay attention to the press releases, we look at the plumbing. And you feel that, I mean, although the American dream isn't dead, it's certainly being shifted. And so, what I guess kind of take the first look at the first thing, the degree. World Fair, over the past couple of years, you've kind of seen a premium placed on higher education has kind of been knocked off from its luster, right?
Hmm.
You see headlines that companies are dropping degree requirements, they're doing skills based hiring, and it sounds egalitarian, right? But that could be kind of a trap door. And so my sources have been telling me what's really happening, that there's kind of like this paper ceiling. So in non-STEM fields, a degree has lost its wage premium, but the absence of one can still hurt you. And so we're creating kind of an underclass of workers who are eligible for jobs, but structurally barred from promotion. And so, kind of just your thoughts on that, Will Fair. Have you kind of been seeing some people being able to go out and get really good paying roles without degrees? Are you feeling that degree is still as important as ever? What's been your thoughts around that?
Yeah, this is a loaded topic for sure. Appreciate you bringing it to the table. Um, and this is everything I'm about to say is just pure opinion. It's my personal opinion, but I have seen the rise in conversation about, is college worth it? Has it become too expensive? And it is expensive. And a lot of um, kids that are going to college, they're not necessarily seeing the return, right? They're not able to pay off their loans in a short amount of time. And it's sort of like this debt that just lingers forever. Um, and so there's been a trend of just, well, I'm not going to go to school, I'm going to get a trade, or, um, I'll just go be an entrepreneur, I'll go make content or whatever it is. And I think everyone has to find their way. But if I were starting out again, I would probably still pursue a degree. I would probably look for with the highest paying jobs in the market and try to base my degree off of that. That's essentially what I did. But I know that was a long time ago from when I went to undergrad. But it is costly, and I don't. I think the days of just like on a whim, like, yeah, I'll go to college and figure it out. I think you have to have a plan. You have to be a lot more buttoned up and serious going into it now because the costs are so high.
Correct, correct. And even within, like, let's say you get into a role and you work your way up the chain. I mean, even with the executives, you're seeing this kind of fractionalization of the economy, right?
Hmm.
Where people who think they made it are not really safe either. Like you're just fractional C-suite. Like I know, some people, one of our frat brothers, as you know, he used to make, well, there's some other CFOs I know, they used to make like $300,000 a year with benefits. And now they become a fractional CFO for like 5 different startups. And so you don't have any equity that matters, no health insurance because you got to pay for the health insurance himself. And so it's just basically a gig worker role in a suit. And so it's just been dispersed through this economy. So that's kind of the first tier that we see is just, the degree and the fractionalization of gig work inside economy. Now, the other thing we want to kind of switch to as well is that there's also talk about assets that were supposed to save you, like for instance, your home, right? And so a lot of people think, okay, home housing market will be fixed when interest rates come up. Really cute, right? But the real problem is that in 5 years, um, the house might be a little bit more troublesome depending upon what part of the country you stay in, right? And it's not because of the market, it's because of insurance, right? You're seeing that, more and more in some of these markets that houses just becoming uninsurable, right? So like you look at data from Florida, California, you had insurers who just left the whole entire state, and people are having to depend on like these really high rate programs in order to get insurance for their homes. And if you can't get an insurance for it, right? How can you get a mortgage for it, right? And so if you can't get a mortgage, you can't sell it. And so you have like these zombie zones where only people who can buy homes have to have cash and pay for it outright, or like a private equity firm who can self-insure. Have you been seeing kind of that impact the market as well, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I so I'm gonna give my 2 cents on it with also wearing my insurance hat. So I was in the insurance industry for a decent amount of time too. Um, Inclement weather has really caused a lot of problems. You got earthquakes in um, California. You got hurricanes in Florida, and all the inclement weather that comes every season. And so a lot of insurance companies they just are not able to make money back in, or like put money into some type of like recovery fund or something like that. Um, like I've personally experienced it with property in Florida where it's just really hard to find insurance. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And there are state programs and several states, I don't want to say all states, but several states have some type of state program where, hey, you just can't get a private company to insure you. You'll have to quote unquote be insured by the state. Um, so it is a challenge, and I don't know. I mean, it's a problem. And with um climate change, I don't know what the future of insurance or how that will work with property insurance either, because now it's not even now it's becoming a little bit more in the southeast than just the coastal areas, um sort of spreading out into the mainland too. So I don't know, man. It's a problem, and I don't know how it can actually be fixed.
Agreed. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. I don't think it will be fixed, right? At least not in the short term. In just the transition that's underway
Yeah.
is underway. And so you got that part eating on the housing market. You've got, like you were saying, when you're going to some of these either tertiary markets now, you're starting to see bigger players playing those markets too now. And then, while you're stuck in that rental, while a lot of people who aren't able to buy houses, they're stuck in these rentals now. And then you look down the street, and your vet, your car wash, the HVAC, the hospital, the doctor, it's not locally owned anymore. You're seeing a lot more roll up plays in place where these companies are being bought up by and gobbled up by private enterprises, and they're turning into larger conglomerates. And as they do that, they jack up the prices. And I'm sure you've seen that where you'll go to your local out of your shop one day, or the local HVAC guy, and the price was one thing, and then you come back the next year and it's just a totally different operation, and it's all in the name of efficiency. And just, I guess we're strip mining Main Street, and they're going to what I think is going to be like and I'm sure you've heard it before, right? You'll own nothing and be happy, right? And so everybody's moving to this subscription model, and you're seeing it, at many different places. And so, just curious about your thoughts on that with the roll up, the subscription model. Any thoughts around that?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I think that is the future. I think own nothing, rent everything. And the subscription model is a lot more advantageous because it gives you some type of consistent um like revenue stream. So if I'm a company, I totally understand why I want, instead of just buying it one time, I want to, slow walk and continue to just get like a stream of revenue essentially.
Sure.
But I mean, not to just go and be extreme and say, oh, I don't know how the economy will survive in that. It's sort of happening and it's been happening for a while. It's just now we're here. And like you talked about the gig economy. So we're already there. And we already sorting the shift to the shared economy. So then it's going to be gig and shared. And then it also kind of goes into a conversation. I don't know if we were having this on the pod, but where you just, I think, what's the term you use? Like a sovereign individual, where it's like you just live anywhere, you work anywhere. It's like, and being able to just move at any time, work at any time. I mean, that could, I guess, potentially stimulate the economy in a different way than like where we are now, where you still have to be tied to an employer for the most part. Like the flexible like work is not as prevalent as it was as during COVID, right? Like a lot of companies are doing return to office mandates and stuff like that, but kind of feel like the genie's out of the bottle on it a little bit. So I'm just curious to see what happens.
Yeah, the genie is out the bottle and it's not getting put back in. Another thing that, and we just had this conversation the other night when we were doing pre-prep about basically access, right?
Hmm.
Just what it all comes down to, subscription is just getting you access. Who's going to have access to this stuff? And it is good that these new tools are coming in with ChatGPT, but you can't help but notice that they're under that same access model, except it's on steroids. So now, you've got these tools that are coming up. You're paying a monthly subscription, but you're only giving. It's not like you in the past where with Netflix you pay one fee, you got unlimited. With these tools, they actually have like tokens and limits on it. So if you'll have access to a certain limit, and then if you want more, you got to pay for more, and then you've got to get access to different tools. And so, it's getting to a point where these will be ubiquitous. Where, I mean, you're already seeing it in some jobs where if you try to apply for the job, you need to have or at least be open to using some of these tools. But you won't be able to really use the tools that you need unless you're paying for it and doing the access to it. So I start to see kind of that T shape where things will bifurcate, and those, that have more gathers more, much gathers more, right? I think, in danger where, people are going to be like a permanent underclass that starts to emerge, if something doesn't kind of switch. The other thing that connect on is that, I guess surviving just in general, like we're adapting. People are, adaptation looks a lot like regression to it, but you're seeing the return of multi-generational living, right? Not because people love their parents, but because the math just doesn't work any other way. And so it brings you kind of to a new term called loud budgeting. So for years, people in the middle class suffered in silence. You had quiet luxury where the goal was, uh, just having luxuries. And now the mask is off and people are going on social media and saying, I'm not going to dinner because I'm broke, or revolting. And it's a refusal to play the status game because they feel the game is rigged. have you been seeing that, or have you experienced that as well, or you had any thoughts around that?
Nah, man, I'm actually intrigued to hear more about this, but um, I guess the two times where I feel like people were a lot more honest and open about their finances was during the Great Recession, the blog era, where the term minimalism started to really explode, and people were just, oh, well, I don't need this, I don't need that. But I think it was more of a result of you can't afford it because everything sort of went bad in terms
Mhm,
of the overall market. So people
mhm,
reverted to minimalism.
mhm,
And so I started to see that again a little bit during COVID. And they were saying like the pandemic when everyone was looking to like do trading or Bitcoin, or everybody was looking to make a quick buck during COVID, um,
mhm.
with the what was it? The little the stimmy, the stimmy package or whatever. Like people were looking to flip that. um, so those were like the two times that I've really seen it be not in vogue to talk about like your finances or your your struggles financially speaking. But tell me more about the like the loud budgeting part. Like you're saying you're seeing that it's becoming more of a trend.
Yeah, just noticing when you go, I've seen a more prevalence of these videos where people are talking about, well, how do you afford this, or I can't eat, or things like that, where they're really focused on, just not paying for stuff or loud budgeting now as opposed to the in. So that's what I was looking at. But it kind of ties into a topic that's also kind of been at the forefront online. It's just the darkest side, which is the dating market, right? Where it's like dating inflation, which, and then people have their complaints about what people are doing. But it's all in really kind of, if you look at it, the trends and stuff, it makes sense, right? Because women are starting. You shared, people are sharing those videos about all these women have these ridiculous demands, but it's really kind of makes sense when you look at the greater trend, even though they may not be conscious of the underlying factors of it. But it's just really in response to the economic environment. I mean, it's a beast out there. And so just out of survival, they're wanting to meet someone who they feel is going to be competitive enough to survive in such a competitive market. And so, even though back in the day, it was easy for them to just, when they didn't have access to the level that they had today in terms of being able to go online and you got the whole world at your fingertips, whereas before it's just a couple of guys on your block. It's still, because of the fierce competitive environment, in order to keep their chances for viability and survival, it makes sense that you'd want to have someone who can, thrive in such a very tough environment to thrive in. Um, I guess so. You were sharing some things about, Scott Galloway's talk with me,
Hmm.
um, and kind of the premium that's being placed and the loneliness epidemic that's been going on with men. Uh, I guess any thoughts around that you would like to share too, in terms of like relationships changing, like dating inflation, or feeling like, there's a financial baseline stability just for people to be partner ready. Anything around that you'd like to chime in on?
Yeah, so let me unpack the Scott Galloway a little bit and keep me honest because I'm referencing something I sent and we talked like via text about it. But Scott Galloway, Professor Galloway, he's like fairly popular on socials, and he talks a lot about the challenges of dating in society now and how it's an epidemic. Um, so it's just saying how society won't perform as well if we don't address the male loneliness, right? And I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I just think it's interesting his point of view about it. So one thing I will say that I've seen, and I know social media is not a representation of the world by any means, but I do see a constant online, like even my algo, it just pops up of people having issues with dating or people having issues in relationships around money and going half on the bills or going half on living expenses or the rent or the mortgage or whatever. It's just a constant. Like I can open up my socials right now and it's gonna be like a long thread of people going back and forth about that stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's like just a microcosm of just social media. And so like maybe the same topics just get, talked about over and over again, like an echo chamber, so to speak. But I don't know. I just, to your point, I think it could be an issue just because it's one of the main things I see on social media, like constantly.
Right. Well, and just as we wrap this part up and bring everything home, I know this is a kind of a lot to jam into a short time period for an episode. Or we could go back and forth, but just really want to connect the dots. So essentially, as jobs kind of shift right from you're coming out, you're getting either more debt to come out of college, or hopefully you can maybe get a degree with based off your experience alone. But basically your purchasing power is eroded, right? Because you're coming out with more debt. uh, Private equity buys Main Street. These businesses get commoditized. It's hard to get a home in some areas if you can get one at all, because of insurance going away and rates are raising and things like that. So community wealth starts disappearing and shrinking, right? So when wealth disappears, third places close. Third places close. Loneliness is on the rise. Loneliness changes dating, marriage, and mental health. And housing's locked up. Young adults delay families. Delayed families reshape demographics. Demographics reshape the labor market and economic growth. So from then, you've got your household balance sheets impacted and they start to weaken. AI productivity, it kind of comes in, but you got the skill gap widen, right? Because you've got the paper ceiling that becomes a barrier instead of just a housing barrier. And so essentially, these aren't isolated trends. This is just a feedback loop, right? And so what happens in the end is it just reshapes what prosperity means, I think. And so the old American dream was stability. You had a job, you had a house, you had a family, you had a community. Uh, I think the new version now is optionality, and you touched on that with the sovereign individual. But I think now flexibility instead of permanence. And so in a situation where you're having access instead of ownership, you're going to have to be flexible in order to maintain access, right? Because if you don't own anything, you stay in a place where it's monopolized, they can jack it up. So the only way you can combat that lever is be able to go be able to move around. It's kind of like Elon Musk did with Tesla. California, he felt was treating him bad. He had flexible and moved to Texas where they treated him better. And I think that's kind of the model that people will have to adopt in this new economy and start looking at it differently. Okay, I can't afford housing in this market. I got to be flexible and be able to go where I'm treated best. And so if people retain that instead of being locked in place, then they have to compete for you as opposed to just, okay, I can treat you however you want to because you're stuck here. So prosperity moving forward, I think now, transition, and this is what's here now, not what's coming. This is where we are today. It's flexibility instead of stability. You got to have skills instead of credentials. You have a network instead of just a neighborhood nowadays. Cash flow, and cash is king. But I still think you got to have assets, right? And you got to have resilience, right? And some people will navigate this well because they'll adapt fast enough before things kind of cook them. But others are just going to get squeezed because they're going to be rigid and stick to an old traditional model that no longer has served them for a while now. And they just haven't been able to transition. So that's just my thoughts. You take it or leave it. It may not be true, but I think that the future belongs to if you're not already established and have some assets in a place that you're able to command and comfortable. If you're just starting out, flexibility, it's the way to go. But welfare, we'll leave you to that. Any thoughts on that as we close out?
Yeah, well said, man. I think we should expand on that in the next part too. Is it's just like, well, if this is, you said it's not even future state, this is current state. It's just like, well, how do you navigate that? How do you make sure you have that resiliency and stay flexible and figure out how to navigate all of this? Um, so I think about it for myself, right? How do you stay ahead of the curve in that regard?
Well, that's what you have to sit down and see what flexibility means for you. But yeah, ideally, just dependent upon what you're trying to accomplish. Again, I just like look at Elon Musk with Tesla, right? He was in a market that California, California seemed like it'd be the best state for EVs, right? They're the most progressive, they're the most forward looking. It's a great market to sell into, so it makes sense to be your headquarters there. But it wasn't. They started taking violence against the company by raising his rates and charging him, and it was no longer amenable for him to stay there. And so he went and picked up and went shopping and said, "Let's see who's going to treat me best," and ended up in Texas. I mean, you saw the same thing with Jeff Bezos and Amazon, though he kind of leveraged it. I think he was always going to pick DC as his place. It just made sense. But before he did that, he created that auction where, remember, they were looking at Atlanta, even though he was never going to move down there. But he had those states bidding against each other for the headquarters. And, he gave the illusion of flexibility, but just even the illusion of flexibility was powerful enough for him to get concede and get what he wanted, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to DC and I'm just going to take what they give me. And so just looking at those lessons, if they've already been adapting to it at the higher levels, we're definitely going to have to do it down here in our level. So, but that's today's show. And we look forward to talking with you next time. Well, listening in, and have a good one. All right.